If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This has been another episode sponsored by Online Horse College. If you haven't had a look at the wide variety of equine-specific accredited courses, then go to onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there.
Today's chat's been brought to you by Archer Creative. Sophie Barrington and Archer Creative are the experts in equine business marketing, and she understands how to achieve success in the horse industry, providing innovative and outcome-driven marketing services that result in a dramatic difference to your bottom line. Go to horsechats.com, search for Sophie, search for Barrington, or search for Archer Creative. Today's guest, delighted to have you back again, Dr. Peter Huntington from Kentucky Equine Research, and today he's going to talk to us about 10 tips on feeding the senior horse. How are you today, Peter?
Good, thanks, Glenys. Very good.
Good.
Or the older horse.
The older horse.
The American terminology. Maybe we should use...
the older. I think we all know. Yeah.
The older horse, yeah.
Okay, well, look, we've got a great question to start you off with and talking about senior and old, but how old is old? What age horses are we talking about?
That's very much an individual thing. And, just as, horses are living longer these days, often living, well into their 30s. But there were some suggestions that, 15 is old, but for many horses that's not old at all. And I think, when you need to start paying special attention very much depends upon the individual. And it may be, is there a change in body condition? Is there a change in the way they chew and eat? Or are they, at the time, they're sort of more predisposed to some of the sort of disorders that older horses get? But there's no one figure. Just as somebody may turn 60 and qualify for a seniors card and be running marathons, and other people are and very fit and healthy, and others are less healthy. So the same applies to horses.
Okay. Good. So as, I'm thinking horse owners, what should we be aware of as they get older? What are the signs we're looking for that the horse is starting to feel a bit older or within themselves?
Yeah, well, some of the things that do deteriorate as horses age, one of them is their joints, particularly if you're still working the horse or if they're just out in the paddock, but they need freedom of movement to get around and graze. But particularly if they're still being worked, so you get the older they get, the greater the risks of degenerative arthritis. Horses don't get rheumatoid arthritis like humans do, luckily. We've also got changes in body condition that may result from changes in teeth. So you get wear and tear and teeth function that reduces. In some extremes, teeth fall out, so it's very difficult for them to chew effectively. We get, one or two other diseases that are much more common in older horses, and I guess the most prominent one of those would be PPID, which is also referred to as Cushing's disease. That's a pituitary disturbance or pituitary dysfunction that is quite common in older horses, and it's the older horse or pony that sort of fails to shed the winter coat or has long hair through summer, and that's the predominant sign. And that in itself may be an issue, it may not be, but some of the other things going on in that horse, like a predisposition to laminitis or infections, may well be an issue. Those are the sort of things that the horse owner needs to look out for.
Okay, yeah. And I suppose they just need to be aware, like we do just with horse owners anyway, make sure that anything that happens with the horse that's changing, we need to be aware of. But at least with the older horses, we've got a bit of an idea that they're getting older. What about their nutritional needs, Peter? How do they change as the horse gets older?
Well, they may not change dramatically as we thought perhaps 20 years ago. The first sort of experiments that were done with the nutrient requirements of older horses was done with horses that had probably actually had coexisting worms from young age when they got older, and it was thought that they had reduced digestion of protein and minerals and things like that. So older horse feeds were designed with more protein and minerals, but in fact when they've been redone in later times with horses that didn't have the worm damage, it was found that wasn't to be the case. They have a greater, I think they've got a few areas where their nutritional requirements change. One is their ability to maintain their body temperature probably changes a little bit.
Okay.
So they can't always maintain that as readily, so they get cold easier and get hot easier. They have a greater need for antioxidants, things that help the body combat oxidative stress, and I guess aging is something that brings up oxidative stress. And some horses, because of the decline in their teeth or other factors, have more difficulty maintaining appropriate body condition. But it's not correct to say that the older horse needs more. I think some of our ideas about what the older horse needs more of nutritionally have changed in recent years, and it'd be more about those factors rather than you must feed the older horse more protein. But yes.
Okay. Now, what about if they've already got dental problems? How can we feed them? What's the best way for the horses?
What happens there is it's usually, sometimes they lose in sizes, so they have more difficulty grazing, but more often they've got dysfunction, their molars are falling out or less useful, and they have trouble chewing, particularly chewing hay or chewing grains that were unprocessed. So, but particularly hay, and they get this thing called quitting where feed gets stuck in their mouth and they sort of can't get it from the mouth into the esophagus into the stomach. And so very often the very old horse, you can't feed them hay at all because they can sort of chew it but not get it passing through the digestive tract, so you've got to feed, and they don't do so well on unprocessed feed, so they do better on a processed feed that is already had some of the digestion started or it's been ground into small particles, and they just have to sort of chew it and manage to swallow it. They're also a bit more prone to choke, which is where you get food caught up in the esophagus. So that's a bit of a factor there. So more feeds that are easy for them to swallow, and that's probably and easy for them to digest. So you wouldn't necessarily feed an older horse just unprocessed grains, for example, as you might be a young horse. And you've got to look out for their inability to chew hay. And often the first sign the owner sees is the horse losing condition, but when they start to look at it, they find the horse just can't, isn't processing, isn't able to get enough feed into their stomach to satisfy nutrient requirements, in the form to satisfy nutrient requirements. Or you look in their droppings and you see, things coming out like large particles of hay or large lengths of hay or grain that they haven't been able to digest.
Now, if the horse has already lost their body condition or it's still declining, what can we feed them?
You've got to look at things that either energy sources that are things that they can chew and swallow is number one. But something that they can easily digest. So many of the feeds in that market would be looking at a pelleted feed or an extruded feed. And the pelleted or cube feeds are quite good because you can sort of soak them a bit, dampen them down, they become a bit of a mush, and they'll manage to eat them quite effectively. And even if they can't chew very well, then they can still get them in, and they're not as reliant on chewing. You're going to have to look at chaff or fibre sources that are like the haylages that are sort of partly fermented, rather than feeding them hay. They still do all right on grass, because many of these horses, if they've got access to green grass, many of them can still use their incisors well enough. Added fats are really good for older horses because they're a concentrated energy source, and they're a good source of nutrients to help maintain body condition. But it's those sort of things. It's getting attention to their teeth so that at least the teeth are in as good a shape as they can be.
Okay.
If moving around the paddock is a problem, they can't get around to graze because their joints they're in joint pain, then looking at, how you address that. I mean, maybe that means feeding the horse up rather than feeding them on the ground. Sometimes they've got pain in their front legs, so they're less likely to want to put their head down. So putting the feed bin up on the stable door or the fence site rather than putting it on the ground may be a factor. and also reducing the competition. So I think, in a herd situation, it's, sometimes they eat slower, so they're then getting knocked around by the other horses who come and want to share the feed bin. So effectively take feed away from them. It's another consideration.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what about if the horse is already healthy? If the horse is healthy, he hasn't actually declined that body condition. Just tell us a little bit about the healthy horse.
Well, I think those horses, you don't necessarily have to say, I have to feed an old horse feed to them.
Okay.
But you've got to look at just the feed that supplies their nutrient needs and perhaps pays a bit more attention to things that you can't necessarily see, but things like antioxidant supply, things like vitamin E, vitamin C, selenium, etc., that are sort of protecting the horse from this oxidative stress that can happen in older horses. So it's not necessary to say, okay, my horse is over 15, but if they're in good condition, I've got to feed 4 kilos of an old horse feed. No, you don't. But I think you just got to pay attention to the particular needs and adjust the diet. But feeding them a balanced diet will help them, combat the rigors of aging.
Okay, all right. Now, you talked a little bit before about a senior horse in a herd situation. Have you got any tips for us there, what we can do about that senior horse in a herd situation?
Well, I think it may be that if the horse is struggling in that herd situation, particularly if all the horses are fed in a group, then maybe you've got to bring the horse out and give it a feed in a yard or something like that. Okay. Take away that sort of competition. And like all, every horse has got different metabolism and different nutrient needs. Mm-hmm. And it's perhaps, reducing that competition is what you need to do.
Yep.
To give it more of a chance to feed, or to feed it something that's sort of more appropriate to its scenario.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Now, you talked a bit before about PPID or Cushing's.
Yep.
Is that just in senior horses? Is that, just the older horses? Can younger horses get Cushing's?
Younger horses can be diagnosed with it, and horses have often got this condition before they get the long shaggy coat, which are the things, we'll automatically recognise, and once they recognise that, then it's really a matter of assessing the severity. But no, you can get it in horses in their early teens. It's not just the 25-year-old horse. So for example, if you've got a horse that seems to have some predisposition to laminitis, then that might be one of the things that you test for, as well as testing for the insulin status, the horse's insulin status. Mm-hmm. But you might test for PPID, which is a blood test. You've got to take account of the time of the year because the levels vary in autumn, and they vary between southern Australia and northern Australia. Okay. So vets are now more aware of that. But it's something that can be tested for, and it's something that can be managed with a once daily sort of treatment of a drug called pergolide, as well as some nutritional management. But it's becoming more of an issue, the PPID, even in competition horses, because dressage horses are competing, well into their later teens, and then this drug pergolide, that's quite effective treatment, actually has got a withholding period before FEI competition. I don't know why, but it does. So that you've got to manage that in circumstances.
Okay.
Get advice with your vet.
If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com. Now, you said about the nutritional management for those horses with Cushing's PPID. What can they have?
Well, that depends. They've got this sort of predisposition to laminitis and also some other infections. They're sort of predisposed to infections, and they're probably some of the major things. But how you feed them very much depends on their body condition. So some of the horses, and it depends on whether they've got insulin dysfunction, metabolic syndrome at the same time. Mm-hmm. So some of those horses, the classic horse is in poor condition. So you've got to feed them increased amount of energy. You've got to feed them low glycemic energy sources. But you've got to increase the amount. So in this instance, things like loosen hay or chaff, if they can eat hay effectively, then higher energy haze, and Lucin is the ideal one there because it's higher in energy and higher in protein, but it doesn't give you a big glycemic response, a big glucose hit, which will influence insulin. So you look at those, you look at some, moderate energy concentrates that, say sort of KR low GI cube would be a good one for that. So moderate energy, and you've also got to look at meal size as being an important thing. So you may want to have multiple small meals. So again, we don't get this sort of big glucose hit during the feed.
Okay.
If, on the other hand, the horse is in good condition, then perhaps you don't need to do too much, and you don't have to rush off to feeding large amounts of a feed. It may be you can just maintain that horse on a balanced diet with a balanced pellet, and so then monitor them that way. And how you feed the horse depends obviously on the response to this pergolide treatment, if you do the treatment with pergolide, and how the horse responds. So pergolide, once you use pergolide, that reduces the risk of laminitis, so perhaps you can have a little bit more freedom to work it out. But it is a situation where you should be seeking nutritional advice on how best to feed the horse, and that very much depends on the body condition of whether the horse has insulin dysfunction as well as PPID. So if the insulin's normal, we can be more free to add carbohydrates to the diet that are good energy sources, but in an insulin dysfunctional horse could be a trigger for more problems.
Okay. Now, earlier on, we talked about what a horse owner should be aware of as the horse gets older, and you did talk about the joints and the freedom of movement, but what can we do? Is there any supplements or particular types of feed that we should use for the older horses to help their joints?
Yeah, joint care is an issue for many older horses, and I think it's either, if you're looking at that, one is not allowing the horse to get too heavy, because that's one thing. The more body weight the horse starts to carry, the more stress there is on the joints. But there are either the injectable joint supplements that you can get from the vet, or there are some oral joint supplements like hyaluronic acid, such as the Synovate HA product that we have, or there are ones with glucosamine, chondroitin, etc., which people can use. And, if the horse is starting to show signs of joint wear and tear, then there's probably a good time to look and getting one of these products. There's a lot of them out there, and look at getting one that might give your horse a little bit of freedom of movement, even though you're not using that to ride the horse, but it might allow the horse just to move around the paddock and graze and not be in pain, because pain is one thing that can changes metabolism and knocks body condition of the horse. So helping the older horse with the sort of mobility via use of a joint supplement is often a very sensible program.
Okay. All right, this is obviously a big area. You sort of think that it's only it's just for the senior horses, but all the horses are going to get old, and there's a lot of people that have got their valuable horse that they've had, and they just want to keep it and keep the horse going into its older age.
They live longer. Horses with better parasite control, horses aren't predisposed to getting cancer like humans are or dogs are, for example. They're living to great ages these days, and so some of them are doing that in a very healthy fashion, and others need a bit of help to get there. And particularly when their teeth start to fall out, you can still keep them going, but you've got to feed them more, and you've got to feed them things that they can chew and digest, so that's where processed feeds are really useful, and so I think but it's an area where I think some specialised advice is valued. If people want to read, it's listeners, want to get more information, there's a number of articles on our Equinews website, in the KR website on the library at www.kr.com. And there you can read plenty of things about some of the things about managing the older horse in various circumstances.
Okay, now can they go to the Equinews and do a search?
They can do a search function there. You can search for older horse or senior horse. You could also sign up. We've got a fortnightly electronic newsletter
Okay.
deal. And there's thousands of articles there. So the top of the page is a search function. And the number one most popular article is putting weight on a skinny horse, and certainly that. So there's good things. Benefits of beet pulp for horses. Yeah, older horses who aren't chewing very well. That's where beet pulp or soy hulls, these super fibre sources, are really good because they're highly digestible fibre, and you soak them, and the horse, they can readily eat them. So they're for a good horse, they are, a really good additive for older horses. And often you need to change feed entirely from feeding a lot of hay to feeding things where the fibre is really hit by the horse. And beet pulp is one of those charts, another.
Yep. Can you just say that website again, please, just in case people have missed it?
It's ker.com and then /Equinews. But if you go to ker.com and you look to the library, and then the first function is search, and then stuff I put in senior horse will come up with, there'll be heaps of articles there. There's a lot there, different feeds for different segments there. Senior horses, why is this horse skinny, etc. So there's a lot of really good information there.
Beautiful. All right, Peter, really good to talk to you again. Looking forward to catching up with you. Yep, and always got interesting information for us. So just remember, if you'd like any more information about those, any of the subjects that Peter talks about, you can go to horsechats.com/Peter Huntington or horsechats.com, search for Peter Huntington. You can have a look at the articles, but they're all available there on Kentucky Equine Research, KER.com. Thank you. I'll see you later then, Peter. See you next time.
Okay, good. Talk to you soon, Glenys. Right, bye.
Now, if you're still there, you probably know that I'm absolutely passionate about education within the horse industry. That's why I host this podcast. My other venture is Online Horse College. Have a look now at onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.